They say you can judge a person not by how they treat you when they need you, but by how they treat you when they think they don't. I stood in the foyer of a house I built, not with my hands, but with my sacrifice. The same house where I paid the bills, mowed the lawn, fixed the damn sink when it started coughing like it had tuberculosis. And now, I was being ordered out of it like some unwelcome guest by a woman who wore condescension like it was silk. Margot Lancaster, my mother-in-law, was the kind of woman who spoke like every word was a commandment. Old money. Sharp eyes. Red lipstick always perfect, like she applied it with a scalpel. She sipped from her crystal flute of entitlement and pointed one manicured finger toward the door. "You have 1 hour," she said, like a villainess in some B-movie, "or I'll have the staff pack your things and dispose of them." I blinked. Just stood there in my wrinkled work shirt, still smelling faintly of sawdust and asphalt. I'd come straight from the site, expecting dinner, maybe a cold beer, not a character assassination. "Why?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Did something happen?" Her lips curled. "My daughter doesn't like you anymore," she said, like it was as casual as canceling a subscription. "So you need to leave." Ah, so that's how it was going to be. Let me paint the scene. Her daughter, my wife, Callie, was nowhere in sight. No confrontation, no conversation. Just a text I hadn't seen yet and a mother playing queen and executioner all in one breath. That's the trick with these types of women. They don't ask, they dismiss. So I looked around one last time. At the walls I painted. The floor I refinished. The cabinets I installed after her vision board deemed the old ones too pedestrian. And then I left. Calmly. Without a word. No screaming. No begging. Just silence. But don't mistake silence for surrender. For the next week, I didn't hear a word. No apology. No follow-up. Not even a half-baked explanation from Callie. Just radio silence. Fine by me. I needed that time. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Paid the deposit in cash. No forwarding address. No public post. Let them wonder where I went. And then, 7 days later, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered. It was her. Not Callie. Margot. The same woman who had me evicted like I was a moldy couch. "Why haven't you paid the rent yet?" she asked, voice tight, all business. I almost laughed. See, there was one little detail they'd forgotten. Hell, maybe they never even knew it. That house? The one Margot barked at me to vacate? It wasn't in Callie's name. It wasn't in Margot's name. It was in mine. We married 3 years ago, and while Callie and her mother liked to play dress-up in generational wealth, most of that money was tied up, trust funds, inheritance clauses, foundation tax dodges. The house they lived in, the car she drove, the utilities, the insurance, the mortgage, I paid it all. Because Callie didn't want her name on the deed. Too much responsibility, she said once. She wanted freedom. Flexibility. Her mother agreed. No point entangling your assets with the construction workers, I think were her exact words. So guess who legally owned the property? You're starting to get the picture. I waited a beat before replying. Let the tension marinate. Rent? I said slowly. Why would I pay rent on my house? There was silence on the line. I leaned back in my chair, sipped from my coffee, and smiled. You see, Margot, I continued, when you kicked me out, illegally, by the way, I decided to leave quietly. I didn't want to cause a scene in the home I still legally own. But since you and Callie insisted on playing landlord and tenant, I figured, you'd be covering your end. Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. You abandoned the property. Abandoned? No. I left because I was ordered to. By someone with zero authority over me or the house. And for the record, I added, you're currently trespassing. Click. No goodbye. No apology. Just dead air. I stood up, stretched, and checked the timestamp. I gave it 15 minutes. Right on schedule. I got the email. From my lawyer. He'd served formal notice to the current occupants, Callie and Margot Lancaster, that they had 72 hours to vacate or face civil action for illegal occupation and property damage. I may be a construction worker, but I know how to build something real and I know how to demolish it too. One brick at a time. It didn't take long after that phone call for things to start unraveling for them. Not me. Margot's voice still echoed in my ears, that shrill tremble beneath the faux calm. I knew that tone. I'd heard it years ago when a contractor made the mistake of overcharging her for marble countertops. She nearly took him to court over an extra delivery fee. The woman was a tyrant in heels. But now? Now she'd been caught squatting like a broke college student in a house she thought she'd inherited by sheer virtue of arrogance. See, while she and Callie were busy playing upper-class martyrs, I was keeping every receipt, every wire transfer, every mortgage statement. Hell, I had a separate folder labeled, "In case of divorce. Dumb moves they'll regret." And you better believe it was full. 3 years ago, I put Callie on an allowance. Not because I was controlling, but because she insisted she didn't believe in managing money. Her words. "It's stressful," she'd said. "That's your strength, babe." So I did it. I paid for everything. Rent, cars, her skincare subscriptions that cost more than our damn electric bill. You know how humiliating it is to walk into your house and see packages on the porch while you're sweating through 12-hour days trying to pay down debt she never knew we had? I did that. So when the lawyer handed me the draft for the notice of eviction, I didn't hesitate. I even let him dress it up a bit. Occupants are hereby notified that the owner of the premises, Mr. Michael Easton, has not authorized tenancy nor received lawful compensation for residency. All occupants are required to vacate within 72 hours of this notice. It landed like a brick in Margot's lap, because now it was official. What happened next was almost too perfect. Callie finally called me. Her voice was sugar-dipped poison, like a bad actress trying to audition for a role she used to play effortlessly. "Hey babe, can we talk?" Babe. That word used to make me melt. Now it made me want to laugh. "Sure," I said, already pressing record on the call. "Talk. I just think there's been a huge misunderstanding," she began, sighing dramatically. "My mom got emotional. You know how she is." "Is that what that was?" "Emotion?" I asked, because it looked a lot like eviction. She paused. "Okay, yeah, she went overboard. But you know I was just overwhelmed. We were arguing a lot, and I needed space. I wanted to ask space for who? But I didn't. Because here's the thing, I already knew. About 2 months before all this, I started noticing things. Hair ties in the guest bathroom. Cologne in the air that wasn't mine. A phone charger that didn't match any of our devices. And then the messages. She left her laptop open one night, and curiosity did what trust no longer could. "He doesn't get me the way you do. When I'm with you, I feel seen. I wish I didn't have to sneak around." His name? Tyler. Of course. A personal trainer with the IQ of a barbell and the jawline of a B-list actor. I screenshotted everything. I didn't confront her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But if I'd blown up then, all I'd have was an emotional mess. No leverage. No paper trail. And I was done being the emotional one in this marriage. So now here she was, cooing into the phone, trying to lure me back into the role of the gullible, passive husband. "You know I still love you," she said. I stayed quiet long enough for her to panic. "Mike? You there?" "Oh, I'm here," I said calmly. "Just waiting for the part where you explain why you and your mother thought squatting in a house I own was a good idea." Her voice shifted. "Defensive now. I live there, Mike. That's my home." "Not according to the deed," I replied. "And what? You're just going to kick us out like we're garbage." "You threw me out like I was garbage," I said. "I just filed the paperwork." That night, my lawyer got a text from hers. Callie wanted to talk. No lawyers. No drama. Just the two of us. I agreed. Told her I'd meet her at the coffee shop near the courthouse. Public. Neutral. Somewhere she couldn't fake tears and manipulate her way back into the house she lost. She showed up in designer heels and last season's apology face. I sat across from her. Brought nothing but my phone and a smile. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What do you want, Mike?" And I just looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, "I want to see how far you'll fall when you realize I was the only thing holding your entire life together." The moment Callie heard those words, "I was the only thing holding your life together," she blinked like someone had thrown cold water in her face. For the first time in our marriage, she didn't have a script ready. No prepackaged defense, no breathy half-truths hiding behind mascara. Just silence. I leaned back in my chair, gave her time to feel the weight of it. Let her stew in that vacuum where charm used to be enough. "You're not serious," she finally said. More question than conviction. "I'm 3 signatures and 1 courtroom away from being legally free," I said. "And when that's done, you're going to find out how expensive freedom really is." She crossed her arms. Defensive. That little pout of hers reappeared, the one that used to convince me, win me back. But I wasn't here to win. I was here to remind. Here's what I didn't tell her at that table, but what I'd been building quietly behind the scenes. 3 months before that day, I'd begun redirecting funds. Not hiding, just allocating smarter. I'd moved joint assets into temporary trust under my name. Legal, traceable, but strategic. While she was buying overpriced skincare and brunching on my dime, I was investing in myself for the first time in years. A buddy of mine from high school, Gavin, runs a construction management startup. Blue-collar guys with Ivy League brains. He'd been asking me to come on board as a consultant for months, but I never had time. Now I did. Funny what clarity betrayal can bring. Gavin offered me a partnership, small cut, sweat equity, and full control over a side project, a multi-unit housing build-out in St. James County. Big enough to turn heads. Quiet enough to fly under Callie's radar. So back at that table, I gave her one last out. I'll file for divorce, I said, but I won't go nuclear. She perked up, eager. Hopeful. All I want, I continued, is the Jeep. And the woodworking gear in the garage. The rest? Yours. House, furniture, his and her sinks you insisted on but never cleaned. All of it. Her eyes narrowed. Why? What's the catch? No catch, I said with a shrug. You can keep your curated Instagram life. Just sign the papers and we're done. She was suspicious. Good. She should be. Because what she didn't realize was that she'd be responsible for everything once I was off the deed. Property taxes. Repairs. The inflated mortgage I refinanced to fund her yoga teacher training that lasted 2 weeks before she quit. And of course, the HOA fees she never even knew existed because I handled every bill like a human firewall. She'd be drowning in her own castle, and I wouldn't be tossing her a life jacket. 2 days later, I got the call. Her lawyer, some slick, overpriced type who probably thought I couldn't spell prenup, wanted to meet. Turns out Callie had no idea the house was still in my name. Margot never asked, just assumed I'd signed it over like some dumb, grateful husband happy to live in a home that cost more than my father's entire career. She'd been living in a house I owned, cheating in a bed I paid for, and spending money I earned, thinking she was above consequence. No? She was begging to negotiate terms. But me? I was done negotiating. I'd already started over. That weekend, I went back to the house. Alone. I parked across the street, just out of view, and watched as a moving truck idled in the driveway. Margot stood near the porch, barking orders at some poor guy wrestling her antique armoire. She looked exhausted. Not in the way people do after a bad day, but in the way pride does after swallowing its own reflection. She saw me. Our eyes met. She looked away. Good. Monday morning, I handed my lawyer a final document, a reinvention clause I added to my divorce settlement. Callie would get the house, the contents, and the title, but she waived any future claim to my finances, ventures, or postmarital gains. Permanently. Ironclad. Irrevocable. She signed it, smiling, thinking she'd won. Meanwhile, my stake in Gavin's project jumped in value after the city rezoned the area for mixed-use housing. By the time Callie realized I was sitting on a gold mine, she was locked out of it. Completely. Later that month, I got a text from an unknown number. You always needed to be the man with a plan, didn't you? See, I stared at it for a while. Then I deleted it. Because yeah, I was the man with the plan. She just never thought I'd stop planning around her. 2 weeks after the papers were signed, I drove past the old house one last time. The street was empty. No yoga mats drying on the porch rail. No sound of Margot on her Bluetooth headset, shrieking into the afternoon air about art auctions or some poor assistant who had the nerve to order the wrong sparkling water. The house looked smaller. Funny, isn't it? How something can shrink without moving an inch. Maybe it was always hollow. Maybe I just filled it with too much hope to notice. The porch light flickered. Figures. I didn't stop. Just rolled by, slow enough to take it in, fast enough not to be noticed. Let them sit with the silence. Let the creaks and groans of an aging house whisper to them at night. They'd never hear it the way I did. To them, it was just drywall and imported tiles. To me, it had been sweat, planning, dreaming. I had bled in that crawl space fixing the heating system Callie wanted eco-friendly. They thought wealth meant value. They never learned what cost really meant. They were learning now. Back in the city, I stepped into the apartment I was renting above a hardware store. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I could actually breathe in it. The walls didn't judge me. The floor didn't feel like a stage. And the silence? It was real. Not the heavy, loaded kind where you're pretending everything's fine while a secret burns in the room like a gas leak. I started working nights again, picking up extra shifts on site and slowly easing into my new role with Gavin's firm. I didn't say much at first, just watched, learned, listened. That's the thing about being underestimated. It buys you time. And in this world, time is everything. Every hour I spent laying foundation on someone else's dream, I was stacking bricks for mine. Then one night, I got a call. Not from Callie. Not from Margot. From Tyler. Yeah, that Tyler. Hey man, he said. Voice weirdly sheepish. We should talk. I didn't say anything at first. Just leaned back in my chair and let the silence press in. I didn't know she was still with you when we started seeing each other, he went on. She told me you were separated. Classic. She also said you'd checked out, he added. That you didn't care anymore. I laughed. Not loud. Just one of those short, bitter things that taste like metal in your mouth. Tyler, I said, do you honestly think I care who she lies to now? I know. I just thought maybe you should know. She's different lately. Cold. Like I'm the one that did something wrong. I bit back the urge to say, welcome to the club, pal. Here's some free advice, I said. Get out before you end up building a dream she plans to sell to someone else. He didn't reply. Just hung up. That same night, I got an alert. An email from my lawyer. Subject line, request for amendment, spousal reallocation. I opened it. Apparently, Callie was trying to renegotiate part of the divorce agreement. Claimed the house was unmanageable on a single income. Wanted to discuss a shared rental structure to offset costs. Let me translate that for you. The queen of the marble throne just realized mortgages don't pay themselves. And the kingdom? It's not so fun when you're the one scrubbing the grout. I sent one line back to my lawyer. Respectfully decline. Let her lean on the man she felt seen by. Click. Sent. A few days later, I heard through mutuals that Margot moved back into her sister's house in Connecticut. The house was too much, she told them. No mention of the fact that the tax lien I'd been paying to keep it afloat had been passed to them. Funny how fast people disappear when the bills don't. Callie, meanwhile, had taken a job. I'll say that again. A job. Apparently her little online boutique didn't hold up so well without the marketing budget I used to fund under miscellaneous expenses. I don't know where she works now. Don't care. But I hope every time she clocks in, she remembers the look on my face when she told me to get out of my own house. And every time she passes that empty guest room or flips on a flickering light, I hope she wonders, what did he take with him when he left? Not just the tools, not just the Jeep, but the last man who ever believed she was worth saving. You'd be amazed how quiet things get once the chaos dies down. At first, I thought the silence would bother me, that I'd miss the chatter, the clinking wine glasses, the fake laughter bouncing off granite countertops I installed but never enjoyed. But the silence? It was like oxygen. The kind you only get after the storm's cleared and you're standing alone on dry land, bruised, sure, but not broken. Just aware. And I was finally paying attention to the things that mattered. The apartment was small, 2 rooms and a balcony that overlooked the loading dock of a hardware store, but it felt like mine. Every nail in the wall, every mug in the cabinet, every quiet morning with black coffee and no one critiquing my posture, it grounded me. I took a piece of cardboard, slapped it on the kitchen table, and started sketching. Not houses. Not business plans. My future. Phoenix Construction. Not officially registered yet. Not branded. No slick website or branded polo shirts. Just an idea born out of pain and trimmed in determination. A company that didn't just build things, but rebuilt people. Men like me. Overlooked. Undervalued. Sick of making other people rich. Gavin said I was nuts. But he knew better than to bet against me. While I worked nights on site, I spent my days wiring the skeleton of the business. A few of my old crew joined in, guys who remembered I always split overtime evenly, even when the foreman looked the other way. Men with calloused hands, sharp instincts, and zero tolerance for bull. We weren't slick. We weren't polished. But we showed up. And slowly, we started winning jobs. One duplex on the east side. A community center renovation that no one wanted. A battered church basement we turned into something beautiful for half what the city thought it would cost. People started to notice. Not the magazines. Not the boardrooms. The right people. The ones who understood value wasn't found in stock options or marble countertops, but in integrity. Then came the twist. I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Didn't recognize the area code, but I answered anyway. Mr. Easton, the voice said. I'm calling from Lancaster Holdings. I believe you were married to Calliope Lancaster. I paused. That name again. Lancaster. Was being the key word, I said. Yes, of course. Well, I'm sorry to inform you that Mrs. Margot Lancaster passed away last week. Stroke. Sudden. We're handling the estate. I didn't say a word. Not out of grief. Just processing. We found a few financial documents listing your name under a mutual investment account. Technically, you're still listed as a secondary stakeholder on one of the holding trusts. If you're willing, we'd like to speak with you about the disbursement. Huh. I had forgotten about that. Back when Margot was playing financial puppet master, she'd once pressured me into investing in a land development project of hers. I wrote a check. She added my name for tax reasons, she said. Guess she forgot to take it off. And now? Now it meant leverage. I met with their estate attorney a week later. He sat across from me in a glass-walled conference room with a leather folder and that practiced, professional pity that rich people think passes for empathy. I assume you'll want to liquidate your portion, he said, already clicking his pen. I smiled. Nope, I replied. I'll hold. Excuse me. I'm not cashing out, I said. I'm buying in. He blinked. But why would you? Because Margot didn't believe in men like me, I said. She thought I was just a placeholder. No, I was a shareholder. Weeks passed. The name Phoenix Construction became more than a logo on paper. It went up on job site banners, sponsorship tables, even the back of a softball jersey. We didn't just build houses. We built homes. For veterans. For single dads. For people who'd been through the fire and didn't just want walls, they wanted peace. My phone didn't buzz with drama anymore. No, we need to talk. No, you forgot to Venmo me for the floral arrangement. Just texts like, job site cleared. Crew ready. Clients thrilled. Says he cried when he saw the kitchen. We did it, man. Then one day, walking past the local market, I saw her. Callie. She was standing near the flower section, clutching a bouquet of white roses. Alone. Hair pulled back, no sunglasses, no entourage. She looked older. Not in a cruel way, just real. Like life had finally peeled the gloss off. She didn't see me. I didn't stop. But I wondered, for half a second, who the flowers were for. Her mother, probably. Then I remembered, Margot hated white roses. She said they were funeral filler. Funny. That's all she ever saw in me, too. Filler. A placeholder. A man she thought she could throw out like last season's centerpiece. But now? Now I was the one people called when they needed something solid. Something lasting. Something real. They say people don't appreciate what supports them until it's gone. I used to think that was just something people told themselves to feel better after being cast aside. But turns out, it's more than that. It's a law of nature. You pull out the foundation, and the structure always starts to groan. Lean. Crack. And eventually, collapse. Callie didn't call after I saw her at the flower stand. Didn't text. Didn't send some long, self-indulgent email laced with nostalgia and fake humility. No, she did something more revealing. She showed up. It was a Saturday morning. I just finished walking a property we were about to demo out near Ridgefield. It was a mess, rotting joists, termite damage, a patchwork of poor decisions. But it had promise. Kind of like me, once. When I pulled into the gravel lot behind the office, I saw her waiting near the back door, leaning against my old truck like it still meant something to her. She turned when I shut the door, gave me that half smile she used to wear when she wanted to smooth over a fight. The one where her eyes didn't match her mouth. Hey, she said. Callie. I nodded, cool as drywall dust. What brings you here? She shrugged, looking around like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be impressed. You've done well. Yeah, I said, stepping past her toward the door. Turns out, when you stop dragging dead weight, you move a lot faster. She flinched. Just a flicker. But I saw it. Can we talk? She asked, following me to the door. I let the silence stretch out, like a plank off a ledge. 5 minutes, I said, unlocking it. And not 1 second more. Inside, the office was simple. Clean. A few rough sketches tacked to the corkboard. Blueprints rolled on a steel rack. A coffee pot that never saw anything fancier than black. It wasn't some polished marble operation, but it was honest. Every inch of it earned. She sat across from me, crossed her legs like she still thought posture equaled power. I heard about your company, she said. Phoenix, right? I nodded. I guess I just didn't realize. She looked down, then back at me. That you'd bounce back like this. That's the thing about rising from the ashes, I said, sipping coffee. First, you've got to burn. She went quiet. Then, carefully. I miss what we had. I didn't laugh. Didn't scoff. I just looked at her. What exactly do you miss, Callie? I asked. The dinners? The comfort? The silence you never appreciated? Or the man who paid for your dreams while you built someone else's escape plan? She didn't have an answer. Just that glassy-eyed look of someone who thought memory might count as currency. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said. Just, I don't know. Closure. No such thing, I said. There's just endings. And then there's aftermath. She swallowed. And then? Then she dropped the mask. I'm selling the house. There it was. What a shame, I said. I hope the market's kind of neglected property. It needs repairs, she admitted. Foundation issues, water damage in the back rooms. I think it shifted during that winter storm. Margot never did the upkeep. I just raised an eyebrow. You have any idea what I should list it for? She asked, almost sheepishly. That was the moment. That single breath where I realized she didn't come for closure. She came for help. She came because she knew that house was only standing as long as I was holding it up. And now? Now it was settling, cracking, sinking, just like her. I stood, walked to the filing cabinet, pulled out a thin folder and tossed it on the table. Inside, my original blueprints, photos, structural assessments, a timeline of upgrades I'd done myself, all dated, all signed, all mine. This is the only help you're getting, I said. These documents show what it was when I had it. Whatever happened after that? On you. She thumbed through the pages. Quiet. I never realized how much you did, she murmured. No, I said. You realized. You just didn't care. She looked up. And now, I said, I care even less. She left with the folder clutched like a raft. I didn't watch her go. Didn't need to. I knew how this chapter ended. She'd try to sell the house. Find out what deferred maintenance and a bad reputation can do to property value. She'd scramble. Maybe beg for a favor or two. And in a year or two, she'd be right back where she started. Except this time, without me to build her way out. I don't build for people like her anymore. I build for the ones who show up early, who stay late, who don't flinch when things crack or shift or start to lean. People who understand that a good foundation isn't just poured, it's earned. Just like respect. Just like peace. About 6 months after Callie walked out of my office with that folder, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A letter. Handwritten. On ivory stationery. Callie always had a flair for the dramatic, especially when trying to rewrite her story with perfume and sentiment. Inside the envelope, a single page. 3 sentences. I sold the house. You were right about the foundation. I hope you find happiness, real happiness, someday. There was no return address. Just her signature, Callie. For a second, I just stared at it. Not because I felt anything for her, but because it hit me. She finally admitted it. I was right. She knew it now. And even more satisfying, she knew I didn't need her to say it. Still, I folded the letter neatly, walked out to the fire barrel behind the side office, and dropped it in. Watched the paper curl and blacken, swallowed by flames. One last puff of smoke. One last ghost exorcised. That same week, we finished the St. James project. 15 townhomes. Affordable, functional, clean. We partnered with a local veterans outreach program and made sure every one of those homes went to someone who'd actually fought for something. Guys who lost more than I ever did. One vet, name was Brian, shook my hand with tears in his eyes. Said it was the first time in years he felt like a man again. That hit me harder than any of Callie's apologies ever could. Because that was value. Not designer countertops. Not curated brunch selfies. Impact. I started speaking at trade schools. Sharing my story. Talking to young guys who were being told they weren't good enough, or smart enough, or clean enough to build something that mattered. You don't need perfect teeth and a trust fund, I told them. You need grit. You need vision. And you need to learn how to stand when the ground shifts underneath you. One kid, maybe 19, lanky, scared, pulled me aside after a talk. You really rebuilt everything from nothing? He asked. I smiled. Not from nothing, I said. I rebuilt from betrayal. He nodded slowly, like that made sense in a way he hadn't heard before. And maybe it did. That night, sitting on the balcony of my small apartment, I opened a cold beer and watched the city lights flicker in the distance. Somewhere out there, Callie was probably playing house in some cramped apartment or awkward dinner party. And me? I was content. Not just surviving. Thriving. Because I wasn't patching cracks anymore, I was pouring foundations. Strong ones. The kind no one could kick me out of. The kind built with purpose, not pretense. I used to wonder when I'd stop being angry. Now I know the answer. You stop being angry when you realize you've outgrown the people who hurt you. When the rearview mirror gets small enough to forget. When all that's left of the past is ash. There's a moment, When the noise finally dies down, when the revenge plays out the way you planned, and you're standing knee-deep in the quiet, that something else creeps in. Not guilt, not regret. Reflection. You look in the mirror, and the man staring back doesn't flinch anymore. But he also doesn't smile the way he used to. He's sharper. Still. Like a blade that learned to stop asking for peace and started making it. That's who I saw every morning now. Not a victim. Not a husband. Just a builder who learned the value of demolition. After Callie, I didn't date for a while. Not out of bitterness, though. Sure, there was some of that in the beginning. But more because I didn't trust myself. It's easy to blame others when you've been betrayed. And don't get me wrong, she earned every ounce of the fallout. But still. I chose her. I brought her into my life. I ignored red flags and let myself believe I could build around the cracks. I was trying to hang drywall over a fault line. And I swore I'd never do that again. A buddy of mine, Daryl, one of the few who stuck around through it all, invited me out for drinks one night. "You need to get back out there, man," he said. "You look like a ghost who pays rent on time." I laughed, but not loud. "Maybe I like ghosts," I said. "They don't cheat. They don't lie." He raised an eyebrow. "They also don't live." Touché. That night, I met someone. Not the usual. Not the flashy kind I used to be drawn to. No stilettos or fake smiles. Just jeans, boots, and a sharp tongue that didn't care about my past. Her name was Quinn. A structural engineer. Smart. Direct. Built her own damn patio furniture and called me out when I offered to show her how to reinforce it. "I read blueprints while you were still lifting lumber," she said with a smirk. I liked her immediately. Not because she needed me. Because she didn't. We talked about old wounds one night, after 2 bourbons and a late walk along the river trail. I told her everything. No polish. No edits. How I got thrown out of my own home. How my mother-in-law treated me like a lawn ornament with a bank account. How my wife handed herself to another man and told me I was too dull to notice. She didn't react like I expected. "No, you poor thing." Just as simple. "So what did you do next?" And when I told her, she smiled. Like she already knew the ending. With Quinn, I didn't feel like I had to explain why I checked the locks twice. Why I still had cameras and storage I hadn't installed. Why I paused every time a woman said, "Trust me." She just nodded. Understood. Said, "We all got our wreckage. Some of us just learned how to recycle it better." Phoenix construction kept growing. Gavin brought in new investors, and we launched a side program training reformed ex-cons in construction work. Real skill building. Real pay. Redemption's not free, I told them. But it pays. One of the guys, a quiet ex-Marine named Lennox, asked why I cared so much. I looked him straight in the eye. "Because I know what it feels like to be underestimated." He nodded. Didn't ask again. One morning, I caught myself smiling in the mirror. Not because life was perfect, but because I'd finally stopped living like a man trying to prove something and started living like a man who'd already earned it. And that's when I knew the rebuild was complete. The demolition was behind me. The foundation was solid. And the man in the mirror? He was finally home.